The worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert, Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance. This is your chance where I sit down with today's tops in business, mindset, wellness, and success to help you master disruption and thrive.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
I'm so thrilled to welcome one of the nation's leading experts on college financial planning. For over 20 years, he's been helping families navigate the complexities of saving, planning, and paying for college through his private practice, blog, and popular podcast, Taming the High Cost of College. He's empowered countless parents to make their children's college dreams a reality without sacrificing their financial future or retirement. Let's give a warm welcome to the WholeCEO with Lisa G podcast, Brad Baldridge. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here. I want to get right into it. Let's go over how do different types of inherited assets, such as real estate, retirement accounts, impact the financial aid process for families.
Right. So, when families inherit money, and this could be the students or the parents, it can have a big impact on need-based aid primarily, but also some of the other aspects as well. So, kind of what we've seen is for many families, it's like the good news is we inherited some money, so now we have the ability to pay for college. The bad news is now we're not going to get as much aid or other impacts, or we're going to pay a lot of taxes or whatever it might be.
Right.
And the reality of it is each of the different types of assets kind of work differently. So when you inherit it, as an example, when you inherit retirement assets, things like IRAs and 401ks and Roth IRAs, those tend to not have an impact as an asset because you don't have to report them on your financial aid form. But when you take money out of those types of assets, they generate income because when grandma or grandpa or whoever it is earned the money and put it into the IRA, they didn't pay any taxes on it. And then it grew and they still didn't pay taxes on it. And then eventually when mom takes it out or dad takes it out or the student takes it out, well, now you do have to pay taxes on it. So it shows up on your tax return. And financial aid is based on your income and your assets. So if you look, obviously, that IRA, although it's not considered an asset because it's retirement, it is generating income. They just changed the rules now where most beneficiaries that are the next generation, so if it goes to kids or grandkids, typically they're going to have to take the money out over 10 years.
Wow.
So if you inherited, a $200,000 IRA, well, you got 10 years to take it out and pay all the taxes on it. So depending on where you are in your college process, it may be a challenge.
And what about real estate? I heard they changed the rules on that in the former administration for inherited real estate. How does that impact the financial planning for college?
Right. So for real estate, it's an asset, so all the retirement things that we just mentioned are not considered an asset. A lot of the other things are. So real estate would be an example of, so if grandma and grandpa pass away, they leave a $500,000 home to their only child who happens to have kids in college. Well, now you need to report that $500,000 home as an asset.
Oh, I see.
And that can have a very detrimental effect on your aid. And then, of course, the kind of the same situation. A lot of times kids don't need another home, so they're going to sell it. And that could generate some income depending on what's going on there. Or maybe they'll keep it and rent it, and that generates a different form of income.
Yeah.
So again, that all has an impact on how financial aid works for most families.
Okay, well then let's get into some strategies to circumvent this process and smart strategies families can use to manage their inheritance and still maximize their children's financial aid for college.
Right. Okay. So when we look at things like about 8 or 10 years ago, I had a family where, kind of this exact thing that we're talking about. Grandma left about $250,000 to her grandson, and it
Right,
was her only daughter, had one son. So again, and her husband had already passed away. So it was grandma, daughter, and grandson, and we're kind of almost the whole family at this point.
correct.
So she decided to leave the 300,000 directly to the grandson instead of to mom's, and say, all right, this is money for college. Well, when we filled out the financial aid forms, they had to report $300,000 available for college. He went to Northwestern, which at the time was about 70,000 a year. So he spent just about the entire account all on college, because every time he filled out the financial aid form, there's a bunch of money there. Now, grandma didn't know what grandma didn't know. So had grandma instead left the money to her daughter,
Yeah,
who was mom in this situation, and said, here's money. I'd like you to use it for college, but it's, you do what's appropriate. They were probably would receive 10 or 20,000 per year more in aid. And that would have preserved about $100,000 over the 4 years, so
right.
that they'd have extra money then for grad school or down payment on a home or whatever else, what other goals that the grandson might have. So just by skipping mom and going directly to the grandson, it had a very big impact.
Wow. So I guess the only way is to advise the people that have the inheritance before they pass away to gift it a different way, or what's like a real life example of a family, another family, for example, that inherited an inheritance and they were able to manage the college financial
Right.
plan better.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So I've had a couple situations where instead of the inheritance going to this directly to the students and just sitting there for college, it went to the parents. And then in one instance, we had about 3 years before college was going to start. So in the meantime, they stuffed as much as they could into their retirement plans and all the other locations that don't count. So they maxed out their HSA, they maxed out their retirement, they maxed out all their various savings vehicles each year. And then they put some of the money into a 529 for college as well. And again, it certainly had an impact, but not nearly as big of impact had they just, dropped it in the bank and let it sit there. And,
Really?
right. And they were also able to, because they were putting money into their retirement plan, that brought their income down. So they paid less taxes, but then they brought their income back up by taking money out of grandma and grandpa's retirement plan, which they would have to do anyway. So they were able to manage their income, manage their taxes, and not have as big of impact as they would have otherwise on their need-based aid.
So they were still able to get financial aid if applicable for their son.
Yes. Yep.
And what is like the best strategy? Like, is it best for grandma, grandpa to gift the money before they pass on, or what other smart strategies do you have for parents that are looking to plan financial aid and financial planning for college because it's 70,000 a year, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So I think in general, um, the ideal plan is that grandma and grandpa keep their money and they help with college when the students are actually in college, because
Oh,
then we don't have to report it as an asset at all. Now, obviously, in some situations that's not realistic because grandma and grandpa may in the end pass away anyway.
yeah.
So they can't keep it per se. But then they need to, again, plan ahead and understand, where the kids and grandkids sit as far as need-based aid and what may be helpful and what may be. And if you're not sure, then build in some flexibility and allow um, the next generation to make some decisions about what to do with the money. Instead of saying this is for college, say you can decide, pass it on, take it as your own asset or pass it on to your kids, whichever makes more sense at the time. Because I think there's a challenge in that, in some situations, you're not going to get need-based aid. So you shouldn't worry about it, right? If a family, if mom and dad's income is already 250,000, let's say, and they're going to state schools, they're probably not going to get any aid. So you don't need to worry about messing it up because they're not getting it to begin with. So then you would want to do tax planning more than financial aid planning and just try and keep the taxes as low as possible. Conversely, if you are going to that expensive school that has a lot of aid, then you want to probably focus on the aid side of it. And if grandma and grandpa, if let's say the student's only a freshman in high school, so they don't know, well, then maybe they can work with their attorney to build in some flexibility and let the parents make the decisions closer to when they know more of the details.
That's better to give the money to the parents and not to the child.
Right, generally. And if it's not, then let the parents take that opportunity to pass it along to the next generation.
Yeah.
And again, this is all part of the estate plan, though. This is what they do with their wills and their trusts. Ideally, they keep it until the bitter end if they can, and then pass it on.
Right.
Because that's the best. Because right now they change the rules when it comes to the FAFSA, and anything that's owned by grandma and grandpa is just not reported at all. So quite often, when the students say a junior or senior in high school and grandma and grandpa are excited and they're like, okay, we've got some money for you. Where do you want, who should we send it to? What should we do with it? And the answer there is, well, just hold on to it, grandma. We'll ask for it a year or two when a tuition bill comes, because then you'll send it to us and then we'll send it on and pay the tuition right away. And then it will never show up as income or asset in the process.
Okay, so if there's no long-term turnaround time, then they just give you the money and then you pay for the education right away.
Correct. And then grandma and grandpa may consider putting it into a 529 or doing other investment options, but just doing it in their own name to start with.
Well, this is all interesting because I know a lot of people talk about financial planning, and obviously it's important in planning for your assets. So what other ninja strategies do you have when people are worried about like this high cost of tuition and wanting their children to be going to school, but at the same time, that's a big investment.
Right. Yeah. So next, certainly we talk a lot about need-based aid, but there's another whole category, which is merit aid.
Yeah.
So a lot of colleges will offer merit aid. And a lot of us, you think about the high academic student, the ones that with the rock star grades. And that's true. Those types of students do get aid often. But a lot of times it will also go to the B student. It'll also go to the athlete. It'll go to the leaders and the people that get involved in volunteer work and charity. There's a lot of reasons that colleges hand out merit aid. And it's, like I said, it's often tied to grades, but not always. So if you have a student that's been very active in volunteer work, let's say, there are colleges out there that will look favorably on that. If you have a strong athlete, a lot of times there's athletic scholarships. Sometimes there's scholarships that technically are not tied to athletics, but they go to the athletes because of their good grades. So that's that combination of both an athlete and strong academics. So there's a lot of different angles that a lot of families can look at. They just need to understand what the options are and how to make it work.
Yeah. So basically you have to be a good student, be a good athlete, do volunteer work, and it's still so competitive.
Correct. Yeah. And again, do you have to do all those things? No. But if you've done any of those things, just kind of pay attention and see which of those things are a good fit at the colleges that you're looking at.
So your financial standing doesn't impact a scholarship, then, in other words.
Right. Not merit scholarships.
Okay.
So some scholarships are completely based on merit. So like Coca-Cola offers a scholarship. Doesn't matter what your financial situation is. If you qualify, and it's very competitive academically, but if you qualify, you win the scholarship, and it doesn't matter. Now,
Right.
Bill Gates over the years has offered a scholarship that is both need and merit. In other words, you have to show a need
Yes.
and be strong academically. And
Right.
if you need to have both in order to qualify for that. And then there's a lot of like the Pell Grant from the federal government that's entirely need based. It doesn't matter what your academics are. If you show a strong enough need, you're going to get the Pell Grant, no matter if you're an A student, B student, or a C student.
This is so interesting. Any final words that you have for our parents to walk away with on how they can be unstoppable in planning ahead for their
Right.
children's education?
Well, I think that is the key. It is planning ahead. So a lot of parents don't realize that, as an example, the FAFSA is based on what was called prior tax year. So if you have a high school senior right now, they're going to graduate in 2025. And you're going to fill out the FAFSA and the application for financial aid this fall in 2024.
Yeah,
But it's going to be based on 2023 taxes, which
correct.
means those are the taxes that you did that applied to sophomore year of high school. So what does that mean? Well, that means if you happen to be the parent of a sophomore, you're getting close to a sophomore today is going to use 2025 taxes. So you want 2025 to be the best it can be. And most parents aren't thinking that far ahead, where they're saying, okay,
Oh,
well, let's do the right thing so that our taxes are as low as they can be, and see if we can qualify for aid. But that planning has to happen a lot earlier. So for a lot of families, I guess the point is you need to start planning sophomore, junior year, not senior year.
that is so good to know. And where can people find you if they want you to actually deploy some of these strategies for them and their children?
Yes. So everything's available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. So that's my website. We have a podcast there. Contact us. You can send us an email. There's a phone number right there on the website. You can pick up the phone and give us a call. And if you call during business hours, someone will actually answer the phone.
Okay, tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. Brad, thanks for being a great guest.
Thanks for having me.